Hello again and welcome back. Now, many believe the conflict in Gaza will end with a lull in fighting. It's also possible the two sides will agree a short-term ceasefire, as we have been discussing, but that runs the risk of being broken, as all previous truces have before. So what is the solution once the fighting is over? There'll have to be a new security arrangement on the ground in Gaza, but who is best to police this? Israel keeps repeating that it ended its occupation of Gaza 3 years ago. If they return military police to the area, it may be seen as a reoccupation. Israel may be happier with Fatah in control. They already have cordial relations with Mahmoud Abbas. But the people of Gaza voted for Hamas, and it's unlikely Israel will be able to eradicate all Hamas resistance. We're still joined by our guests in Ramallah, Mustafa Barghouti, in Haifa, Dan Shuftan, and in London, Betty Hunter. Now, far-reaching consequences for the stability of the region, all this has, no doubt. Mr. Shuftan, haven't Israel's actions taken the region to the brink of really an incredibly dangerous situation?
Not at all. I don't think anybody in the region will make war for the Palestinians, certainly not for the radical Palestinians, because we are not speaking here about the Palestinian people. We are speaking about the most radical and belligerent element that is not willing to coexist with Israel and openly speaks about the destruction of Israel. You already have a rift between Hamas and Egypt. You have a rift between Hamas and Jordan. What you have here is the same axis of radicalism, namely Iran, Syria, Hezbollah, and Hamas. These are the elements that may work together. But Hezbollah, I don't think, will open a front in the north. And even if a front in the north is opened, this does not spell out a regional conflict. The chances of this erupting into a war with the Arab states is practically zero. And therefore, the whole notion as if the whole stability of the region rests on the Palestinians is tested again and will again be shown to have no basis whatsoever. Again, let me remind you that in the year 2002, we had a much greater operation against the terrorists in the West Bank, and the regional ramifications were practically zero. Nothing happened. And I don't think anything will happen now.
OK, let me bring in Betty Hunter. Betty, let me put it to you that you could say that the best hope for Palestinians is that Gaza is in control of a leadership that perhaps is prepared to be more conciliatory towards Israel. What would you say to that?
Well, first of all, I have to reply to your previous speaker. I mean, what he's talking, as Mustafa Barghouti said, is lies. I mean, he is really announcing that warmongering on behalf of Israel is the way forward. Now, it is true that, unfortunately, the international world and the Arab states have not acted in support of Palestinian human, national and political rights in the past. But to say that this is a good thing, which is basically what he is suggesting, and that, in fact, Israel should be able to continue to actually act against international law in upholding its illegal occupation is really something that we around the world have got to take up and say it must end. Now, the situation of Hamas in Gaza, he outlined exactly what the Israeli strategy is. He's quite correct in that. It is to divide and rule, and Israel, unfortunately, has had the absolute support of the British government, the European governments and the democracies of the West in actually rejecting the elected democracy of the Palestinian people because they decided they did not want a Hamas government. In fact, Hamas offered to talk with Israel right from the beginning. Hamas actually constructed, with Mustafa Barghouti in it, a government of national unity in Palestine after the elections, but I'm afraid the machinations of Israel with the support of the West ensured that that was destroyed. And unfortunately, what they have done is armed other factions in order to destroy Hamas.
But,
now,
but Hamas haven't exactly been an innocent party in all this, have they?
No, they haven't, and I reject some of a lot of their methods. But to paint them in the way that your Israeli spokesperson said is absolutely to ignore the massive vote for Hamas, which is moderate Palestinians of all parties voted for them because they had seen, unfortunately, that the policies of successive Israeli governments, whatever their political shade, has been to not allow any advancement of the Palestinian national aspirations. Labour, Likud and now Kadima, in fact, don't mind. They have governments with extreme right-wing parties who they proclaim that they want the destruction of the Palestinian aspirations for national statehood and so on.
Well, let's talk about the Palestinian
just last week called for the
aspirations.
transfer of Palestinians out of Israel. This is not moderation. This is, in fact, trying to destroy the human rights, the national rights and the political rights of the Palestinian people. Israel has shown
let me bring in
it is not
Mustafa
a partner for
Barghouti,
peace.
if I may just interrupt. Mr. Barghouti, what do you think this is going to do to the unity or otherwise of the various Palestinian factions? Where does it leave them?
Before answering that, let me please say something. I think it is difficult for Israelis, including your guest, to accept the fact and the reality that Israel in this situation is not the victim. The Israelis like to be the victims, and they enjoy being the victims. They want to always show that they are the victims, but they claim they are the victims while they are not the victims. In this conflict, the Palestinians are the victims. The Palestinians did not dispossess the Israelis. The Israelis dispossessed the Palestinians 60 years ago. That's why 5 million Palestinians are living abroad and cannot go home. The Israelis are the ones who occupied the West Bank and Gaza and who are still occupying West Bank and Gaza and East Jerusalem. The Israelis are the ones who are oppressing us now in the West Bank, where there is no Hamas government, there is a Abbas government, but they still shoot people when they demonstrate peacefully, and they're killing children. The Israelis are the ones who are arresting 11,000 Palestinians. So reversing the reality will not work. And the vast majority of Palestinians support two-state solution and supported two-state solution. Some of them are maybe changing their mind now. And I'm asking the Israelis, if Abbas is so good and you like him so much, how come for a whole year during Annapolis process you gave him nothing? Why for the whole year Israel did not agree to negotiate any of the substantial issues, whether it's the issue of Jerusalem or the issue of refugees, and instead of doing that, they are saying not a single refugee will be allowed back, Jerusalem will never be divided, settlements have to stay, settlers have to stay. Even the roadmap which speaks about freezing settlement activities have been translated into activation of settlements at a rate that is 38 times more than before Annapolis. The checkpoints have been increased from 521 to 699. That's all in the West Bank under the rule of President Abbas. So where is the peace process?
Okay, we need to move it on. We're running right out of time. I just want to bring Dan Shufton in.
No, I'm finishing.
Okay, just finish your point, but very briefly, if you may.
One point. Yes, please. I just wanted to say that what Israel has done is transforming occupation into nothing but an apartheid system, and they are now putting Palestinians in Gaza and everywhere in ghettos. That was done before to the Jewish people, and it was awful and should not happen to Palestinians. We should all find a way to peace and stopping this violence.
Okay, we're coming towards the end of the program now, and Dan Shuftan, I just want to ask you, what does Israel actually want out of this? Let's just say Hamas are toppled. Who fills the void?
I did not say that Israel is seeking toppling of Hamas. If you can get Palestinians who are willing to negotiate a two-state solution, namely a Jewish state alongside an Arab state, then Israel will be delighted. If not, Israel will continue to force on everybody who tries to shell and bombard its cities to pay a very, very heavy cost for it. Israel will not accept either the friends of Mustafa Barghouti blowing themselves up in Tel Aviv, or the friends of Betty Hunter bombarding Sderot, Ashkelon, and other cities inside Israel. If they will do it, they will suffer the consequences of it. But if you can reach a point
Israel
where they're
the
willing
Palestinian
to accept
people?
a state in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, if they're willing to accept a state in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip alongside
well, tell us, would Israel accept to end the
This
occupation of 67?
solution.
Will Israel withdraw from East Jerusalem?
I'm willing
Tell us the
to
answer to
discuss
this.
anything,
Mr. Shuftan,
but
if you
not
let
if you
Mr.
break
Barghouti
into
speak.
my words. I'll be delighted.
You
I'll
don't
be
want to end
delighted
occupation. You
discuss
want us
whatever
as
you
slaves
want
of
in a civilized
occupation.
way.
Let me just leave the final
this will
word
never
to
happen.
Betty
We don't
Hunter.
want
Gentlemen,
to.
if I could just
If there is
interrupt and
one thing,
leave the final word to Betty
look
Hunter. Mr.
at the
Shuftan, you've had plenty of
Israeli-
time. We're coming to the end of the programme. Betty Hunter, what would you like to say?
I would just like to say that the Israeli people should be watching around the world the strength of the response to what they're doing in Gaza. Thousands of people have been on the streets and will continue to be on the streets here in London, around Britain and around the world. I think they should take note. The world no longer, as Mustafa Barghouti has said, sees the Israelis as the victims. They understand when they see the bombardment and the devastation and the destruction that Israel is wreaking upon the innocent, unarmed civilian population of Gaza, that it is the Palestinians that are the victims. And Israel should actually start listening to the people who are advising it, including its own people.
OK, we'll have to leave it there. We've run right out of time. It just demonstrates the difficulties that everybody has in trying to get any kind of settlement. That is it for now. We will, of course, follow things closer as they move on. Dan Shuftan, Mustafa Barghouti and Betty Hunter, thank you all for your views and perspectives. And thank you, the viewer, for so much for joining us here on this edition of Inside Story. We welcome your comments and suggestions. Please email them to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. Bye for now.